I was standing in a crowded ballroom that evening, holding a glass of cold water, when I heard a group of people laughing loudly. The laughter came from my ex-wife's new husband, a man named Derek, who was entertaining his friends with a story about me. The unemployed loser. The guy who wasted years chasing a stupid dream. They had no idea that every single one of them worked for my company. They had no idea who I really was. But soon, they were about to find out. Before we dive into this story, let me know in the comments where you are watching from today. If you enjoy stories about unexpected comebacks and sweet moments of truth, hit that like button and subscribe to the channel. Stick around, because the moment Derek realized who I really was, let me just say I will never forget the look on his face. Now let me take you back to where it all began. My name is Norris, and I grew up in a small town in Ohio, nothing fancy. My father worked as a plumber, spending his days crawling under sinks and fixing broken pipes for families who could barely afford to pay him. My mother was a nurse at the local hospital, pulling double shifts just to make sure my sister and I had everything we needed. We were not rich by any measure, but we had love, and my parents taught me that hard work was the only real currency in this world. I studied software engineering in college, graduating with a degree that came attached to nearly $80,000 in student loans. But I was optimistic. I believed that if I worked hard enough, I could build something meaningful. I could create a life worth living. I met Lauren at a summer barbecue when we were both 25 years old. A mutual friend introduced us, and I remember thinking she was the most beautiful woman I had ever seen. She had this energy about her, this spark that made everyone in the room gravitate toward her. She worked in marketing for a mid-sized company, and she had ambitions that matched her charm. We talked for hours that night, and by the end of the evening I knew I wanted to spend my life with her. We dated for 2 years before I proposed. She said yes without hesitation, and we got married when I was 27. Those early days felt like a dream. We rented a small apartment, decorated it together, and talked about all the things we would accomplish. I was working at a tech startup at the time, earning a modest salary but gaining valuable experience. Lauren seemed happy, or at least I thought she was. But as time went on, I started noticing cracks in our foundation. Lauren wanted more. A bigger house, a nicer car, vacations to places we could not afford. She would scroll through social media and sigh at pictures of her friends living lavish lives while we counted pennies at the grocery store. I tried to reassure her that our time would come, that I had plans, that I was working on something that could change everything. You see, I had been developing an idea for years. A software platform that could help businesses streamline their operations. I called it StreamFlow. Every night after work I would stay up until 2 or 3 in the morning writing code, testing features, imagining what it could become. Lauren supported me at first. She would bring me coffee and kiss my forehead and tell me she believed in me. But that support faded faster than I expected. After 3 years of marriage, I made a decision that would change everything. I quit my job to focus on StreamFlow full-time. I had saved enough money to survive for about 8 months, and I was convinced that if I dedicated myself completely, I could make it work. Lauren did not see it that way. The arguments started small but grew into something uglier. She accused me of being reckless, of gambling with our future, of caring more about my stupid software than our marriage. I tried to explain that this was for us, that I was doing this, so we could have the life she wanted. But she stopped listening. Then I noticed the changes. Lauren started coming home later and later, always with excuses about meetings or drinks with coworkers. She became distant, secretive, protective of her phone. I wanted to trust her. I wanted to believe that we were just going through a rough patch. But deep down I knew something was wrong. One night I saw a text notification flash across her phone while she was in the shower. It was from someone named Derek. The message said he could not stop thinking about their lunch together, and that he could not wait to see her again. My heart sank. I felt like someone had reached into my chest and squeezed until I could not breathe. I confronted her that night. She denied it at first, called me paranoid, accused me of snooping. But when I pressed harder, the truth came out. Derek was a senior manager at a financial services company. He wore expensive suits and drove a BMW and represented everything I was not. Lauren admitted they had been seeing each other for months. The worst part was not the affair itself. It was what she said to me during that conversation. She looked me straight in the eyes and said, "You are going nowhere, Norris. Derek has a real career. He can give me the life I deserve." Those words cut deeper than any knife ever could. The divorce was finalized 3 months later. Lauren took most of our shared assets, which was not much, but it was everything I had. I was left with a tiny studio apartment, my laptop, and the code for a software platform that nobody wanted. My friends, most of whom were really her friends, stopped calling. They had heard Lauren's version of events, the story of the lazy husband who threw away his marriage chasing a foolish dream. I hit rock bottom. I remember sitting alone in that empty apartment staring at my laptop screen, wondering if I should just delete everything and give up. What was the point? My wife had left me for a richer man. My friends had abandoned me. My parents were 1,000 miles away in Ohio, worried sick but unable to help financially. I had never felt so alone in my entire life. But something happened that night. I do not know if it was stubbornness or desperation or some combination of both, but I started reading through the code I had written. Line by line, I examined what I had built, and I realized something. It was good. It was really good. This was not some half-baked idea. This was a legitimate product that could help real businesses solve real problems. I made a decision in that moment. If I was going to fail, I would fail, trying not quitting. I would pour every ounce of energy I had left into making StreamFlow succeed. And if it did not work out, at least I would know I gave it everything. From that night forward, I worked 16 hours a day, 7 days a week. I lived on instant noodles and black coffee. I did not buy new clothes or go out or do anything that cost money. Every penny I had went into keeping myself alive long enough to finish what I started. 8 months later, I had a working beta version of StreamFlow. It was not perfect, but it was functional. The problem was that I had no money for marketing, no connections in the business world, and no reputation to speak of. So I did the only thing I could. I started sending cold emails. Hundreds of them. I wrote personalized messages to small business owners across the country, explaining what StreamFlow could do and offering them a free trial. 99% of those emails were ignored or rejected, but there was one response that changed my life. His name was Marcus, and he ran a small logistics company in Texas. His family had owned the business for 3 generations, and they were struggling to compete with larger corporations. Marcus was skeptical at first. He told me he had tried other software solutions and they had all been disappointing. But he agreed to try StreamFlow because, as he put it, he had nothing to lose. 2 months later, Marcus called me. His voice was different than before. He sounded excited, almost giddy. He told me that StreamFlow had reduced his operating costs by 30%. His employees were more efficient. His customers were happier. He wanted to know how much it would cost to keep using the platform permanently. That phone call was the first domino. Marcus told 3 of his business owner friends about StreamFlow. They signed up. Then they told their friends. Within 6 months, I had 50 paying customers. Within a year, I had 200. I hired my first 2 employees, and we worked out of my tiny apartment. It was cramped and chaotic, but it felt like we were building something special. Then a venture capital firm noticed what we were doing. They reached out and asked for a meeting. I showed up to that meeting wearing a suit I had borrowed from my father. It was slightly too big in the shoulders, but it was the nicest thing I had access to. I presented StreamFlow to a room full of investors, explaining our technology, our customer base, our vision for the future. By the end of the presentation, they offered me $2 million in funding. I almost cried right there in that conference room. But I held it together, shook their hands, and walked out of the building before letting the tears fall. That night I called my parents and told them everything. My mother sobbed with joy. My father just kept saying he was proud of me over and over again. The years that followed were a blur of growth and expansion. StreamFlow went from 50 customers to 500. Our team grew from 2 people to 40. We moved out of my apartment and into a real office in downtown. We started attracting bigger clients, including several Fortune 500 companies. But here is the thing. Throughout all of this, I kept a low profile. I did not give interviews or appear in magazines or post about my success on social media. Streamflow Technologies became well known in the business world, but very few people knew that I was the founder. I liked it that way. I had learned the hard way that external validation meant nothing. The only opinion that mattered was my own. By the time I turned 35, Streamflow was valued at $80 million. I bought a penthouse in the city, but I still drove the same Honda Accord I had owned for years. I wore simple clothes, avoided flashy accessories, and generally blended in wherever I went. People who met me at industry events often assumed I was a mid-level employee, not the CEO. I was single. I dated occasionally, but nothing serious. The wound from my divorce had healed, but it left a scar. I was cautious about letting anyone get too close. Somewhere along the way, I learned through social media that Lauren had married Derek. They had gotten married about 2 years after our divorce was finalized. I did not seek out this information. It just appeared on my feed one day, a photo of them at their wedding smiling like they had won the lottery. I also learned that Derek now worked as a senior manager at a company called Whitmore Financial Solutions. The name sounded familiar, and when I checked our client list, there it was. Whitmore Financial was one of our biggest accounts. They had signed a contract with Streamflow 18 months earlier. Derek worked for one of my clients. He did not know it, and I had no intention of telling him. It was not my business. I had moved on, or so I thought. The charity gala was hosted by the City Chamber of Commerce on a Saturday evening in October. It was a black-tie event at one of the nicest hotels in town, attended by business leaders, politicians, and philanthropists. I had been invited because I had made an anonymous donation of $100,000 to the Chamber's Education Initiative. They wanted to thank me personally. I arrived alone, wearing a simple dark suit. No expensive watch, no designer shoes, just a regular guy at a fancy party. The only person who knew my identity was Margaret Thompson, the chamber president. She had reached out to me directly when she received my donation, and I had asked her to keep my involvement confidential. She agreed. I was standing near the bar, sipping water and watching the crowd, when I heard a voice that made my stomach drop. "Norris, is that you?" I turned around, and there she was. Lauren, my ex-wife. She was wearing a red dress that probably cost more than my first car, and she had a glass of champagne in her hand. Her smile was not warm. It was the kind of smile a cat gives a mouse before pouncing. Before I could respond, a man appeared beside her. He was tall, broad-shouldered, and wearing a suit that screamed expensive. This was Derek. I recognized him from the photos I had accidentally seen on social media. He looked me up and down with an expression that suggested he had just stepped in something unpleasant. "So this is the famous ex-husband," Derek said, his voice dripping with condescension. "Lauren has told me all about you." I said nothing. I just stood there holding my water, waiting to see where this would go. Derek turned to a group of 4 or 5 people standing nearby. They were clearly his colleagues based on how they deferred to him. "Everyone come here. You have to meet this guy. This is Norris, Lauren's ex, the one I told you about." The group gathered around, curious and amused. One of them, a young woman with sharp eyes, looked uncomfortable, but the others seemed eager to witness whatever spectacle Derek was about to create. "So, Norris," Derek said loud enough for everyone nearby to hear, "what are you up to these days?" "Finally found a job I chose," my words carefully. "I am between opportunities at the moment." Derek laughed. It was an ugly, mocking laugh. He turned to his friends and said, "Did you hear that? Between opportunities? That is what people say when they are unemployed and too embarrassed to admit it." The group laughed along with him. I noticed a few people glancing over from other parts of the room, drawn by the noise. Derek continued, his chest puffed out with pride. "You know, I just got promoted at Whitmore Financial. Senior manager now. We are doing some really impressive work. Just signed a huge contract with this tech company called Streamflow Technologies. You probably never heard of them." I took a sip of my water. "I have heard the name." "Yeah, well, it is kind of a big deal," Derek said. "Not that you would understand. You were always too busy chasing that little software dream of yours." "How did that work out, by the way?" Lauren decided to join in. Norris was never good with business. That is one of the reasons we did not work out. No ambition, no drive. I felt something stir inside me. Not anger exactly, more like a profound sadness. These people had no idea how wrong they were. But there was also a part of me that felt nothing at all. Their words bounced off me like rain off a window. I had spent too many years building myself back up to let them tear me down now. One of Derek's colleagues, a younger man who seemed slightly less cruel than the others, asked me a question. "So what is your plan going forward? Any prospects?" Before I could answer, Derek cut in. "His plan is probably the same as it has always been. Sitting in his apartment working on some app that nobody will ever use." Am I right, Norris? More laughter. This time louder. People were definitely staring now. I was about to excuse myself and walk away when I noticed someone approaching our group. It was an older woman with silver hair and a commanding presence. Margaret Thompson, the Chamber of Commerce president. She walked straight up to me and smiled warmly. "Mr. Norris, there you are. I have been looking for you. The board would like to thank you personally for your incredibly generous donation this evening. $100,000 is the largest individual contribution we have received all year." The laughter stopped instantly. Derek's face twisted in confusion. "Donation," he said. "Him, lady, I think you have the wrong guy." Margaret turned to look at Derek and her expression cooled considerably. "I assure you I do not make mistakes. Mr. Norris is our most generous donor tonight, and we are deeply grateful for his support." Lauren and Derek exchanged bewildered glances. The colleagues who had been laughing moments ago suddenly looked nervous. Then one of them, the same young man who had asked me about my plans, went pale. He leaned toward Derek and whispered something, but in the sudden silence everyone could hear him clearly. "Dude," he said. "Norris. Streamflow." "The founder of Streamflow Technologies is someone named Norris." Derek frowned. "So what?" The young man grabbed Derek's arm. "Streamflow Technologies. The company we just signed the contract with. The company we work for. He is the founder. He owns the whole thing." I watched as the realization spread across Derek's face like a slow-moving wave. His confident smirk dissolved into something resembling horror. His mouth opened and closed several times, but no words came out. Lauren looked like she might faint. Her champagne glass trembled in her hand. The group of colleagues backed away slowly, putting distance between themselves and the man who had just publicly humiliated their boss's boss's boss. For a long moment no one spoke. The silence was so complete that I could hear the string quartet playing softly somewhere across the ballroom. I did not feel triumphant. I did not feel vindicated. I just felt tired. These people, this drama, this need to compare and compete and prove worth. I had left all of that behind years ago. Standing there watching Derek's face cycle through shock and fear and shame, I realized that I had nothing to prove to anyone. I set down my water glass and spoke quietly. "I never wanted you to find out this way," I said. "Actually, I never wanted you to find out at all. This was not some elaborate plan for revenge. I came here tonight to support a good cause. That is all." Derek started stammering. Norris the first. "Listen, man, I had no idea. I am so sorry. I did not mean." I held up my hand to stop him. "Derek, your job is safe. I do not mix personal matters with business. Your team does good work, and I have no intention of changing that. What happened here tonight does not leave this room as far as I am concerned." He nodded frantically, relief flooding his features. But there was also something else there. Humiliation. The knowledge that he had made a fool of himself in front of everyone who mattered. Lauren stepped forward. Her eyes were glistening with unshed tears. "Norris," she said softly, "I did not know. I never imagined." I looked at her, really looked at her for the first time in years. She was still beautiful, but the spark I had fallen in love with was gone, replaced by something harder and more calculating. "That is the thing, Lauren," I said. "You never tried to know. You saw what you wanted to see. You made assumptions about who I was and what I could become, and you never once considered that you might be wrong." She opened her mouth to respond, but I was not finished. "I hope you find what you are looking for. I genuinely do. I do not wish you any harm, but whatever we had, whatever we were to each other, that story ended a long time ago. It is not my chapter anymore. I turned to Margaret and extended my hand. "Thank you for a lovely evening. Please give my best to the board." She shook my hand warmly. "The pleasure was ours, Mr. Norris. You are always welcome here." I walked through the crowd, past the staring faces and whispered conversations, and out the front door of the hotel. My Honda Accord was waiting in the parking lot, surrounded by Mercedes and BMWs and Teslas. I got in, started the engine, and drove home. On the way, I expected to feel satisfaction. I expected to feel joy at seeing the look on Derek's face, at watching Lauren realize what she had given up. But that is not what I felt. What I felt was peace, a deep, quiet peace that I had not experienced in years. The weight I had been carrying, the need to prove them wrong, to show them I was worthy, it was gone. I did not need their approval. I did not need their recognition. I did not need anything from them at all. In the weeks that followed, Derek sent me a 3-page apology email. I responded with 2 sentences: "Apology accepted. Focus on your work." Lauren reached out several times through text and email. I never responded. There was nothing left to say. The gossip at Whitmore Financial spread like wildfire, but I issued a company-wide memo asking everyone to treat the matter as private. Most people respected that request. Interestingly, some of the colleagues who had been laughing at me that night became some of my most dedicated employees. Perhaps they felt guilty. Perhaps they wanted to prove themselves. Either way, they did good work, and that was all that mattered to me. About a year later, I met a woman named Sarah at a technology conference. She was a high school teacher with no interest in business or startups or any of the things that dominated my professional life. She liked me for who I was, not what I owned. We started dating, and for the first time since my divorce, I felt genuinely happy in a relationship. I also started seeing a therapist. Not because I was falling apart, but because I realized that success does not automatically heal old wounds. The betrayal I experienced with Lauren, the years of feeling worthless, the loneliness of building something from nothing, those scars needed attention. Therapy helped me process everything and taught me that true forgiveness is not about letting others off the hook. It is about freeing yourself from the burden of carrying their mistakes. Looking back, I am grateful for everything that happened. Not because the pain was fun, but because it shaped me into someone I am proud of being. If Lauren had stayed, if she had believed in me, I might never have found the desperation that fueled my success. I might never have discovered what I was truly capable of. The lesson I learned is simple but profound. Success is not about proving anyone wrong. It is about living up to your own potential. The people who leave you when you have nothing do not deserve to be there when you have everything. And the greatest revenge is not revenge at all. It is simply becoming the person you were always meant to be and letting the world catch up. If you are going through your lowest point right now, I want you to hear this. Your story is not over. The chapter you are in is not the end of your book. Keep going even when it hurts. Keep building even when no one believes in you. One day you will look back at this moment and understand why it had to happen. Before you go, I want to ask you something. Have you ever been underestimated by someone who thought they knew your whole story? How did you handle it? Drop your answer in the comments below. I read every single one. If this story resonated with you, please hit that like button and share it with someone who might need to hear it today. And if you are not subscribed yet, join the family so you do not miss the next story. Thank you for watching, thank you for listening, and remember, your worth is not determined by the people who fail to see it.